Welcome to the MindSpeaking podcast, where we talk about the human side of data. In other words, data, communication, and personal development. My name is Gilbert Eikelenboom. I'm driven by curiosity, and my aim is to spread insights that you can apply in your life starting today. So, let's do it. Let's start MindSpeaking. Today in the MindSpeaking podcast, I'm talking to Scott Burk. Scott has a Ph.D. in statistics. He's also a professor of data science at CUNY. He has 30 years of experience and has authored 4 books about data science and AI. I'm asking him what are the common pitfalls when companies try to adopt AI, data science, and analytics, and how to make AI programs successful. He's also talking about presenting to non-technical people, and I'm asking him, because he has 4 children and even a few grandchildren, how they look at him, how they see him as a dad that knows so much about technology. So without further ado, let's dive in the conversation with Scott Burk. Hi, Scott. Exciting to meet you and exciting to talk to you today.
Hey, Gilbert. Good to meet you as well. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. And where I usually start is asking people where they grew up and what type of person they were in high school. So can you tell us a bit about that before we jump into the data?
So I grew up in Central Texas in high school. I was kind of a rebel. I was very involved in athletics, not that studious. However, growing up in Central Texas, it was pretty easy to make straight A's. The curriculum was not overly difficult. So I had a great high school life. A lot of fun, a lot of good memories. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I probably could have been more studious to prepare myself for the universities, but it all worked out. I think I had a really good balance. Yeah.
And you mentioned you were a bit of a rebel. Do you still see that side in you when you look at your career, or because it can be a very positive trait as well, right? To stand out, to innovate. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. So I do see it as a positive side, and I think as you get older, you realize when you're being a rebel. When you're young and you're being a rebel, you don't even realize you're actually doing it. So so it's better to be a rebel when you're a little bit more seasoned than when you're a teenager, for sure.
Got it. Yeah. So now you have much more self-awareness about the rebel side that maybe sometimes pops up, and
Correct.
You can channel it into something positive.
Mm-hmm.
Great to hear something about your background and how did you end up in data? What were some of the important decisions that you have made or that you made?
Well, I tell people that I started my analytics career actually as an analytic chemist, so which is certainly different than what we talk about in analytics today. But the quantitative side has always been there. I went undergrad as a chemistry biology double major, and then my first gig was an analytic chemist. And then I started programming a lot at the lab that I was working for, and then got involved in computer science. And then from computer science in the lab, started a graduate program in business finance, but on the quantitative side of finance, not the qualitative side, capital markets, that sort of thing. So then I went to work for Texas Instruments and did a lot of computer science. And then after about 5 years, got an itch, wanted to go back to school. And that's when I really started focusing into mathematics. And since I had my master's degree, I was able to teach at Baylor University and work on a Ph.D. at the same time. And it was in statistics. So that's really when I started really kind of the nuts and bolts of my career. But I believe in lifelong learning. The whole time that I was working professionally, I started a program. Actually, a little bit of an interesting story. I went to a class for what's now IBM Modeler, right? So it was SPSS at the time. And so the instructor, he said, we were learning SPSS, but he said, hey, look, I've got this really cool software that we just bought, and it was Clementine, and it was the first visual platform with objects that you could drop down into a canvas. And so he goes, this is a very expensive software. I won't quote the number, but it was, in the high range, tens of thousands of dollars. He said, but if you take a class at Connecticut State University, you can get this software for $200 or something like that. And I said, I'm in. I'm going to just enroll. And so I started taking classes and ended up just getting, another degree in data mining. So it's really kind of interesting, the statistics versus the data mining view of the world. And so, but again, I believe that tools are to be used, and you need a broad tool chest to pick and select from. So yeah.
Right. That's a really interesting journey you've made, and eventually you wrote several books on data, AI, data science, and one of the series is named "It's All Analytics," right? And
that's correct.
And you'd also talk about common pitfalls about that organizations see or experience when they try to adopt data science, AI, analytics. What are those common pitfalls? What do you see there?
So one of the pitfalls is that organizations are very functional. Many organizations are very functional, right? And so you have different departments speaking different language. So really, an example, Casey Panetta had an example where, you might be, the finance department might be speaking Spanish, the HR department might be speaking Portuguese, the marketing department is speaking English, etc. So you have all these different ones. So one of the pitfalls is that every organization should have a baseline of data literacy or analytics literacy where people can communicate, right? Because organizations are definitely moving towards being more analytics driven, right? AI and analytics are driving a lot of ROI in companies, and it has such a potential. Really, we're just scratching the surface of what we can do. So we need a foundation in being able to speak to that. And then really there's three pillars that need to come together in any organization to be successful. And one is the organizational design itself, how the organization, what the culture is of the organization, and with the structure to support that. And then another piece is the data design piece, and then the third piece is the analytics design. So those three have to be fit together to be useful in organizations. Yeah.
So I certainly see how those three pillars are important. And do you have any other ways or tips for companies or people that are listening that are trying to build AI programs or that are building the data science and analytics capability? What else do you see as important?
Yeah, so I actually have I could go on a long time on that question. So again, so the first and foremost thing is to have executive support, right? I've been involved with many different companies over the years, and one of the things that is missing sometimes is the corporate objective will be, flavor of the month, and they'll roll out things. And when it comes to it, you've got to ingrain analytics and AI into the culture itself, right? So there's a couple ways to do that, to enable that. First off is at the executive suite level, and we have a new book coming out this year that's specifically designed for the executive and leadership on that. So it's a little bit of a different thing, but designing a center of excellence and having cross-functional assignment structure in organizations. So you might have the functional units themselves, but the best design is if you have for example, a center of excellence is one design that you can have, that matrix. It's a matrix organization that combines across all those functional units, right? So if you have a COE, you can have best of breed, and then you can embed those people across within from a project standpoint. Another design is a center, a community of practice, right? Some organizations are really doing this well, where they design it's not necessarily functional. It is more of like-minded people coming together to solve and to educate. I just mentioned the fact that you've got to speak the same language. One of the ways that you can help enable that is through a community of practice, where you have functional groups coming in to a common core. That common core has very specific objectives. The leadership actually incentivizes that through the organization, and so that's another way that you can do it as well. No, go ahead.
Yeah, what I see with many people in the business, you talk about speaking different languages, and it's important to understand what you're talking about, right? What's the topic on the table? And what I see and hear is a lot of AI and machine learning flying around. And many people are confused with the terms and what is the difference. What is the simplest way of simplest explanation you've heard or used to distinguish the two?
Yes, so there are a lot of terms that float around. In addition to those two, everything from statistics, data mining, machine learning, AI, et cetera. But the question is that the difference between machine learning and AI, right? Okay. AI is an overarching term. Well, I'm not going to give you a simple answer. Maybe I'll get to a simple answer. So that's been around since the 1950s, right? So AI was developed in the 50s, and it tends to be an overarching term, right? So it includes machine learning. Machine learning is a subset of AI. So that might be the simplest way to put it. All ML, machine learning, is AI, but not all AI is ML. And so AI can include much more, everything from even decision-based rules, right? So, rule induction, where machine learning is about algorithms being trained to answer specific problems.
Right. I think that's pretty clear and pretty simple. I've seen a lot of different explanations on the internet and everywhere. So I think this comes pretty close. But you mentioned a bit about the past, about the 1950s, but also I would love to look ahead, not 70 years ahead, but let's look 5 years ahead. Where do you see the market of data science, analytics, AI moving in the coming 5 years?
Sure. So we've already seen some great advances in advanced pattern recognition, right? Image recognition. I think that's just going to continue to expand, and it's going to democratize, right? So I had a conversation this week with a group of mechanical engineers. They were not trained data scientists. Obviously, they were smart, had no formal training, but they were using Python to develop some really nice algorithms. And it's because of the libraries. It's because we have so much knowledge that's available at people's fingertips, right? Everything through, YouTube, the MOOCs, the massive online courses that are available, et cetera. I think the next advance, some companies are doing it, is streaming, right? So video, right? So video is much, it's taking that image recognition and pushing it in. And you obviously have to have technology to support the video streaming, the information that's coming in, the recognition. So an example of that might be, smart cities, where you have cameras along the streets that are identifying potential collisions or wrecks or problems. So I think that's going to be, smart cities is going to be a big opportunity across the globe. So, and streaming in general, right? So just faster and faster data with quicker and quicker decisions. I think we're going to see that over the next 5 years. Plus, people that never had the ability because a lack of coding experience or a lack of background, they're going to be enabled to do things that they never thought that they would be able to do before in the next 5 years. Yep.
Right. Do you think people that have not learned how to code yet should still learn how to code?
Absolutely. I think it's, and I whether it be mathematics or coding, I think that this skill is useful, but more importantly, it's the way your mind starts to rewire to think, right? I mean, if you get into coding and everything, it's a beautiful, right? It's a way to get lost very easily because it's so, well, it can be frustrating, but it can be very gratifying as well, right? You get in the zone essentially. And so, yeah, I think it's a good skill, but it's also good just for your brain. Your mental process and making you smarter overall outside of coding.
Yeah, it helps you to think analytically, I guess. And I speak a lot about the other side as well, combined with technical skills, analytical skills, also communication skills. What do you see as the role of communication skills in data?
Well, it's paramount, right? Because if you can't communicate results, if you're, an analytics professional or a data scientist or modeler, there's no way that you're not going to get very far without those communication skills, right? So, and there's different levels of those communication skills. Obviously, there's just the basic communications, but there's the storytelling, which is becoming very popular. We write about that. The dashboards, the visual, especially business leaders, they want to see dashboards. They want to see it visually, right? So visual storytelling is extremely important. But I'm also, I with a word of caution, we have to be careful that we're not putting in, or we're not just cherry picking what the story, right? We have to give the complete story as well. And I have a quote that I really like is, torture the data long enough and it will admit to anything. And you can do that very easily in analytics and AI. You can cherry pick, select the parts of the story that you want to tell, leave out parts of the story that you don't want to tell, go into the boardroom and really kind of mess things up for the long term.
Yeah, I think is becoming a really big topic within data and also AI. What you do with the data, how you represent it, because for sure you can really mislead people and guide them towards the decisions they actually don't want to make. But just because you show the data in a certain way, it pushes them in a certain direction, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And then the last piece is to make sure that the math supports the assertion. What I mean by that is, you mentioned the reason we love visual dashboards is the fact that over thousands and thousands of years, we've evolved into being able to quickly recognize patterns and see things in pictures. So that's beautiful. At the same time, we also make up patterns that we think are in the data, and they're not really there. So again, I think you need the mathematics and the statistics to say what is truly meaningful and what's not. And then a combination of the two, that just, to our earlier point, that just makes sure that you're telling the right story, right? I mean, is it, and there's a difference of statistical significance and practical significance. And along, an aside with that is, we try to tell stories in our books, right? So instead of trying to make it just, here's AI, here's, machine learning, here's whatever, we have little vignettes, and the reason for that is people love story, and it makes it more interesting. And yeah, one example is where Netflix developed the $1 million prize. They had $1 million algorithm that they knew that worked, and so this is where the objective significance or statistical significance pairs up against the practical significance. They never even used that algorithm, because once they did the math, they knew it worked, right? It was $1 million algorithm, but once they did the analysis of how much it would cost to put an engineer into practice, it just wasn't worth it. So you need both practical as well as mathematical objectives significance.
Yeah, and the practical side is a big thing. What I see with many machine learning AI projects, that they fail because people produce something that might be good on paper, but people just don't use it because they don't understand it, or they don't appreciate it, or it's not in line with what they need, or it doesn't fit in the business processes. So I think that's such a big factor of being a data scientist, to also understand that side. We talked about communication skills, a little bit about data storytelling. You teach data science as a professor at CUNY, and I'm wondering, to which extent do students learn about communication skills and storytelling, or developing a business mindset?
So they learn it within the projects and everything that they have in the different classes. There is a visual BI course specifically towards developing dashboards and analytics and best practices, the ways that you want to do that with different tool sets. But CUNY is very much project driven, so you have to present your results, and so I think that's probably where it's done more than it's really a practice area for getting into industry, right? Because you're going to have to do that and this is a Master of Science in Data Science. So these data scientists are going to have to present to their managers, to executive leadership, their results, and pitch their story, right? Pitch, what they've done and why it's meaningful to the organization. So it's really kind of embedded. It's other than the dashboard visual BI course, there's not a dedicated storytelling course, but again, it's embedded in pretty much each class.
Yeah, fantastic. It's great that they get such practical experience through the project work and practice those communication skills or storytelling or visualization. And I think it's a really important piece that people need to develop.
Yeah, I mean, retrospectively, I didn't get a lot of that in my coursework. So yeah, we're learning, we're getting better.
How did you catch up? I mean, how did you adjust, or when did you notice, hey, this is important, or I'm missing a piece?
So it was trial by fire, basically, and between a combination of Texas Instruments, semiconductor company, and a healthcare company I worked for. It was really the healthcare more than anything else, because it was non-technical people that you were presenting to. So it really challenged you. And one of the things that I did personally, and I would recommend it to anybody, is I took a Dale Carnegie class where I learned to do, public speaking, and how, it was, it designed, they've been around for years and years and years. And basically, I never thought of it this way, but looking at it, essentially that course is about storytelling. It's really about creating a presentation, and there's different objectives. But if it were to be boiled down, it really would be a course about storytelling.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Dale Carnegie, I know they have a lot of really powerful courses. I really like the book of Carnegie. It really changed my career. I read it when I started my career. So the very first in the holiday, I went to Cuba. I brought a book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. So it's slightly different, of course, compared to what you were saying. But it's written by
Stephen Covey.
by Stephen Covey, exactly. And it really changed my perception. I thought it was a book about business because it was about effective people, right? But it's more about how you look at the world and how you see other people. So I see quite some overlap in type of skills that data scientists need and what is presented in that book, and apparently also what you learned in the Dale Carnegie course.
Yep, those are two of my favorite books, and I try to get back to those every couple of years and read them again because they're just timeless. I mean, just great information.
Mm-hmm. Something that is not timeless is technology, and we see all the new developments. And you, of course, you have children, and you told me before we started recording you even have grandchildren. So what I'm curious about is, how do your kids or even grandkids, I'm not sure how old they are, but how do they perceive you? You must be an awesome dad, keeping up with technology and knowing everything about the newest things.
Well, I have wonderful children, all of them, and however, I think it's kind of interesting, and my wife could be as well. I mean, it's almost like a separate relationship, right? So it wouldn't matter if I won a Nobel Prize. I mean, I'm just Scott, right? To them, I'm just dad, granddad. My two grandkids are really pretty young, so but I think it'll be the same with them. I'm just there as a supportive family member. So it's really kind of interesting. It's a different paradigm. I mean, I learned from all of them. My wife especially, but yeah, I mean, when it comes to it, I don't take myself too seriously because it wouldn't do any good.
Yeah, that's good. It reminds me of an interview I read with Obama. And they talk to him about his family, and what he's saying is that his kids make fun of him because he gets paid for public speaking, right? And he's not a good speaker, and etc. So I see, of course, Obama is an amazing speaker, but I see the parallel there where Obama also said, yeah, that the relationship with my children is very different.
Right.
All right. We're nearing the end of this conversation. I'm having a lot of fun. What I would like to talk about now is your current work, because right now you're kind of making a shift, making a bit more time for teaching, for your book. What would you like to share about that?
Sure. So after 8 years in technology, specifically software solutions, I'm taking a little bit of a sabbatical. I want to take 6 to 8 months off, except for teaching at CUNY this summer and writing. So I've got to finish up the third book in the series. It's all analytics. So, and we have a little farm outside of town, and so for the next 6 to 8 months, I'm going to be doing a lot of physical work out there. Hot Texas summer. Yeah, just trying to get a little bit of balance and figure out what I want to do next. I mean, quite honestly, I think I'd like to, well, I have lots of book ideas, and I think one of the things that I'd like to do is focus on problem design and problem solving, because I think sometimes we've done too much of trying to depend upon computational power to solve problems. And from my experience, a lot of it boils down to problem formulation and design. So I'm thinking that's where I might go, but who knows? I'm just looking forward to having a little bit of time to think about next steps.
Yeah, sounds good. Such a period of a pause and having time to reflect and write sounds awesome. And I hope it's gonna work out well for you with lots of new ideas and working out your book. I'm looking forward to that. What is one big takeaway you would like listeners to get from this episode?
I think since this is focused on AI analytics, those people in that space, it is a beautiful journey from I mean, I've worked in every, I mean, I've worked in probably 10 different verticals, academic, non-academic. And so data is something that permeates everything. And data is a reflection of process. And the only way you're going to improve is to look at process, and whether it be data in your career or data in your personal life as you try to improve yourself. I mean, to me, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So
wonderful. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing that. And the last question is, where can people connect with you or follow you? Where can they find more about your books?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I have a website. It's allanalytics.com all together. And then, or you can go to Amazon and just put in It's All Analytics, and the books will pop up. We have 2 more coming out this year. One specifically to medical, and one specifically that I mentioned earlier to the executives. So have those 2 coming out, and then next year we'll have the 3rd book for that. LinkedIn is probably one of the best ways to connect with me right now. If Elon gets Twitter, I'm probably going to be more on Twitter in the coming year.
Let's see. Then I'll create an account as well.
You're right.
I don't have one yet.
I don't have an active one right now.
All right. Well, thanks so much for making the time. For everyone listening, check out the books. I will put the links in the show notes. Thanks for making the time today, Scott. And I really had a good time and learned a lot. And I'm pretty sure the listeners have as well.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Gilbert. I appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot. Speak soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Do you want people to listen to your data and increase your business impact? Then take my free email course or do the quick self-test of your data communication skills. Go to mindspeaking.com and start learning today.